Welcome to this week's episode of PreZence. I'm your host, Cindy. Today we are joined by Querine van Grinsven. Welcome, Querine.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm so happy to be here.
One of the reasons why I'm very excited that Querine has joined us is because she is someone who has a very beautiful and gentle soul. Querine has studied animals. She has the ability to connect to animal wisdom and understands their nature. What we're going to do today is learn a little bit about animals, their wisdom, and how it can be applied to our lives, whether it be a work situation or a personal situation, based on Querine's knowledge in terms of biology, but also the wisdom and spirit of animals. So let's dive in. Querine, where did your interest in animals come from?
I have always been connected to animals. I don't remember a moment that animals have not had some part of my life. Like the earliest memories, we've always had pets. So that, we always had them in the house. And instead of playing with dolls or other girly things, I had my whole wall was full of stuffed animals because I wanted all different animals in my room. So I've always had that fascination.
That is so lovely. And this fascination with animals really has been an impetus for what you do professionally in terms of, again, understanding animals and getting to know them, as well as being more connected to that natural element of the cycle of life and being a living organism. Can you tell us about your background in terms of what you do with animals professionally so that we can better understand your interest in animals?
I do different things. I actually have an ecological research and consultancy company with my husband. So I have a very down to earth grasp of everything that happens in nature and with animals. And so I know a lot about animal behavior and habitats, but I also separately have a different company that's actually that I communicate with animals. Because of that, I figured, well, if we can communicate with animals, then there must be more to animals than just them wanting to eat and to sleep. There must be a reason why they are here on Earth. Just as you sometimes wonder, is there more to life than just us being here and working and sleeping and eating? And so I was wondering, is that the case with animals as well? Do they also have another purpose here? And I start picking up on lessons and wisdoms and knowledge that animals share with us, and they really, really enjoy sharing with us. They have this almost magical powers that we can learn from and that we can tap into so that we can expand on what we know and what we can do with the knowledge that they can give us.
Can you share with us a time when you first started to connect with this idea of animal wisdom and what that wisdom was and what lesson, if anything, you were initially exposed to when that led you to have these insights that there's wisdom that we can learn from animals?
I was in Yellowstone National Park, and there was this evening, and I was just there by chance that day. And that evening, there was somebody who was going to talk about the stars and the constellation. This person knew so much about the folklore from different peoples and cultures and what all these folklores and constellations meant for different people. It was the perfect night, and it was so dark, and we saw all the stars and Milky Way. And he was telling me about all these, and I'm thinking folklores are so old, this is not just made up. This is something that's been passed on from generation to generation and going way back. And that started this whole idea of, well, what if they know that we don't know now? I was actually talking to somebody who is a captain on a huge ship, And he said that he's the last generation of people that can actually navigate by the stars. They don't actually get taught anymore how to navigate the stars. And I think that's such a shame because there's so much to learn. I mean,
Hmm.
how cool is it that you've got a whole navigation ship system right up, above your head? I mean, Harriet Tubman used it to free slaves, there's so much history just in that. That actually got me thinking, well, if people were so interested in these stars and they gave them these special powers, and there's a lot of constellations that are animals as well, like the Leo, you've got the big bear, the small bear, you've got all these also animals in as constellations in the sky, and obviously that appealed to me. And I'm thinking, wow, people back then must have realized that there's something really special about these animals if they're seeing them in the stars and making folklores about them. And that's how I actually got interested in all of it.
Wow.
Yeah, I did a lot of animal behavior, like the very earthly kind of animals here. But then I also started thinking, well, but they might have a bigger purpose, just like we do.
So you first began by studying animal behavior, and then after studying the animal behavior, you began to think, okay, this is their behavior, but how does that behavior connect to the interconnected of life and the purpose and the reasons why we are here?
I also felt that studying behavior, I mean, I did animal management, my studies, and I always felt like there was this part missing of the animals, that we were just looking at them as if they were things like computers or tables. And we're always talking about animals as if they weren't alive, but they all have different personalities. You can have 10 different German Shepherds, and they
Mm,
could all have different character traits. Everybody's saying, oh, it's a German Shepherd. But like with us, you can have one family and still have very different character traits, and
right.
people might look the same, but it doesn't mean that they act the same.
Right. So some of the things you started to become interested in is this idea of the biology of an animal, and yet that biology expresses itself different, just like the biology of a human being expresses itself differently through the personality.
Yes. And
Nice.
my husband and I, like I said, have an ecological company. And it's really funny because we always have like this idea that we can manage animals, we can manage nature. We can't, it's not like we can go out and tell a lion, well, mister, you can't do this behavior because it's not in my book. It's not something that we can manage in the sense, like computer sciences is something we can manage. We can't manage the weather.
Mm,
I mean, weather management, I mean, the idea is just ridiculous. It's the same with nature and with animals and even people. You really can't manage people as an intrinsic being. You can manage them in the sense that, like, okay, when it's lunchtime, you expect people to quietly and neatly go into the lunchroom and have lunch. But there'll always be people that won't be eating lunch. You can't tell them, but this is lunchtime, so you have to eat lunch, kind of
right.
thing. So in that sense, you can tell them what you expect from them, but you can't actually tell them what to do.
So as you began to glean all of these insights in terms of understanding animal biology, animal expression, and animal personality. How did that lead you to start your second company, Animal Snow, and what exactly is Animal Snow about?
I never thought that I would start a company for myself with animals because I didn't really think that a lot of people would be interested in this part of animal nature. But I really felt that it was time. It was time to let people know that there's so much more to animals than what we think of when we go on safari or the dogs that we take out for walks. There's so much more to animals than what we already know. And I use animal in my healing or to help people. I had a customer and she saw a certain kind of animal everywhere she went. So she came and she asked me, what does it mean? I told her what the animal was trying to tell her. And she was amazed, really amazed at what I was telling her and how true it was in her life. She actually took what I told her and she was able to move forward. And about
Mm,
a week later, she actually sent me an email that she wasn't seeing this animal anymore
mm.
because she had gotten the message and she had integrated the message. And then the animal was gone. And actually, another animal came back into her life, which was good.
That's a beautiful story. You know, sometimes in a job interview, they'll ask you if you could be an animal, what animal would it be? Or what's your spirit animal, right? What animal do you connect to? And somebody might say, I connect to a dove, or I connect, to a fish. I connect to a dog. I connect to a lion, or what have you not. And the whole idea with some of these questions that are now being used is to glean personality, but also the type of spirit that you have and how you fit in company culture. And it's very interesting because 10, 20 years ago, questions like that in a standard professional environment wouldn't be asked. So it looks like there's a shift happening where we're understanding that animals are more than just animals and they're more than companions. There are sentient beings we can learn. With that in mind, I do have a couple of questions for you. Let's say if I wanted to use some animal wisdom or spirit in the workplace, what animal would you recommend if I wanted to ask for a raise or tell my boss that my workload is too big and I feel uncomfortable? I'm scared. I'm thinking, perhaps my boss is going to misunderstand me or XYZ. What would you recommend in terms of a situation like that and how to think of an animal to create or start a conversation, let's say with a boss?
Yeah, so that's a really, really interesting question. I think a lot of people would be struggling to speak up in situations like that. And I think the first animal that a lot of people might expect is a lion because they're very impressive, obviously, from the inside and the outside. They just command respect. When they start roaring, I don't think that that's really a good place for you to put your boss in when you're trying to tell him something. So, the animal that I would actually tap into in this case would be a dove. In some religions, some practices, they symbolize peace. And going into a conversation like this, setting a peaceful environment would help a conversation. Obviously, it will help you communicate better.
Mm,
And another thing about dove is dove lives from a true heart. And when you speak from the heart, that's actually when people can hear you. Dove really helps you to be able to talk more from your heart space.
I love
And
that.
yeah, and you wouldn't expect because people, like doves, pigeons, people are kind of like, yuck, 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 go away. But they have a lot to tell you.
Mm,
And they actually work on their own foundation. So they work from a place where they can be really confident. And
mhm.
so working with dove energy also helps boost your confidence. And that is something that you're not talking from arrogance or cockiness or being nervous, but you're talking from a very confident place because you have a good foundation. So you know exactly what you're going to say and why, and you have your facts and everything straight. Dove also knows exactly where the fine line is, the exact balance between peace and standing up for yourself.
Oh, I like that.
So, how cool is that? What if we could all do that? We could walk the fine line between peace and standing up for yourself, talking from true confidence, from your heart. I mean, how cool would that be if we could all do that?
That would
So,
be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I mean, how different would the world look?
So let me ask you another question in terms of tapping into this animal wisdom in a very practical and tangible manner. Let's say I have a big presentation and I want to propose a program or a new strategy to improve certain outcomes in the workplace. What animal energy or spirit or wisdom would you recommend that we do for that?
Oh, I like this question. Wow, so many to choose from. But I think that I would definitely go for horse.
Horse.
Yes.
Why?
Horse has a huge sense of freedom. They
Mm,
love the open space and just see it as their empty canvas. And they love to go from a flow into this freedom. And so this would be the perfect place to get your creative juices going and to have no limit in your creative flow, in the way that you present something. Just imagine that you're like galloping, in these
mm.
open prairies.
I'm
And if
imagining
you,
Mustangs running through the
yeah,
plains.
exactly, something like that. And I mean, how wouldn't you just get sucked in if somebody can bring that kind of energy, like a Mustang just going for it on the prairie, and bring that kind of energy into a presentation? Everybody would be hanging on every word that they have to say. Horses also intrinsically know what's good for them. So they create ideas and get people on board because of that energy.
Wow.
Yeah, so and also another thing that would really come in handy in situations like this, like if it was also a presentation, but also if it's like a project. I mean, horses were once prey animals. I mean, they're you know, basically no more wild horses, but they used to be prey. So if you tap into horse energy, they will pick up on very subtle things, subtle vibrations. So if in a presentation they kind of lose their audience, or like if in a project they feel, oh, we're kind of steering in the wrong direction, kind of like, oh, we're going into a valley and we could be ambushed kind of situation, they are so quick to just swerve around and take the flow into somewhere where it's going to be good and safe and open. And so, yeah, I think that they have a way to steer away from danger, and they avoid falling down the rabbit hole, so to speak.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I really like that because, sometimes if there's an important presentation and you get nervous, you might start to go on tangents that are unnecessary. But
Yes.
if you tap into that idea, that wisdom of staying on track, which would come from that self-preservation that you were referring to, it can really help stay focused versus talking about things that are unnecessary that could lose our audience in terms of this presentation. So I really like that. And I did not know that horses used to be prey animals. So thank you for teaching us that.
Yeah, and horses also have a really good sense of humor, so they can
Mm,
keep energy very airy. And also, being a herd animal, horses can really work well together. So with them, it's kind of like the energy gets magnified. So if you're
mm.
working on a project and you tap into horse energy, you know, because of that, they actually magnify that energy and it becomes a lot more productive. How great is that if you can have a group of people that come together and they work as a herd? We're focused on one thing and that's what we're going for, you know?
That's so wonderful. That's such a great way to think about teams. And, it makes me also think about like the herd master, right? Because there's always a horse that is leading the other horses, but they do
Yes.
work in tandem and you see them when they're all running together. It's like a stampede, but it's a very controlled chaos. and they
Yes.
do work really well together. So that's a beautiful symbol to think about in our minds. So we can all learn so much from that in terms of horses. Let me ask you one more, if I may. My dog, my animal, wants to join us, so she's coming up, so she's here. Say you're in a toxic work environment, and I'm asking this question is because it's happened to all of us at some point in our lives that we've been in some type of toxic work environment. And there are people who have made us feel uncomfortable or make us feel uncomfortable. Is there a way to create a more genial work environment by tapping into a certain animal wisdom?
I think that this is such an important question. And yes, I think that this is something that we have all experienced either in school, in our work, or in even in like parties or some, sometimes there's just this one person who kind of, wow, let me think out of the whole arsenal of animals, so to speak. I would actually pick monkey.
Monkey. I
Yes.
never would have thought of a monkey ever.
No, I
So
know,
tell me,
I
tell me
know.
why. Tell us why.
Okay, so monkeys are really intelligent,
Hmm.
are very curious,
Hmm.
and are really smart in their way of thinking in solutions.
Oh, okay.
So, because of the resourcefulness of monkey, they can talk their way out of any situation because they think on their toes, basically, is
Mm-hmm.
how we would describe it. They always have an answer and they're quick because they're just so witty. Monkey always finds a really surprising solution or
Mm-hmm.
a way out of a problem or a situation whenever he needs it. So, because of the element of surprise, the way that he reacts in a way that is completely out of the blue for everybody, you know, he creates this window where he can just turn the conversation, the situation around, and so that you can avoid an uncomfortable silence or something, you can change the mood really quickly, instantly. And even with toxic people, can, take the focus out of it. Kind of like a bee sting, how he can just take the sting out.
And then, we all know the term stop monkeying around. We say stop being silly, but really it's a way to lighten the mood.
It is. It really is. And it's kind of sad how it's been kind of has a negative connotation because I do think that people underestimate the power of monkeying around. I think
Mm.
people would have more joy and would just monkey around a little bit more, that things would be more fun. And I think
No.
that people underestimate the intensity of fun in their life. Things should be more fun, more simple, more and not childish, but childlike.
Yeah, and monkey's such a great teacher for that.
Yeah, and they're really cunning.
Mm.
And yeah, when they can really play on that. And they usually have a lot of luck too. Monkeys have a
Ah.
lot of luck on their side. They can gain a lot of advantage from that. And he's also like with horse, but like in a very different situation. When the winds of change, like even in the slightest begin of feeling that there's going to be a change in something, monkeys are completely agile and can just jump right out of a situation. They are so easy in their movements so that
Yes.
they can, kind of sidestep everything and
I like that. So that's a really good way to deal with uncomfortable or toxic situations, lightening the mood, sidestep, being cunning, and that adaptability, like you said, to be able to jump if they sense anything wrong. And again, like with the horse or with the dove, I did not expect you to say monkey. And yet once you explain it, it makes a lot of sense.
another good thing about monkey. Can I just tell you, because this is a really, really cool thing about monkey, is they know exactly when to pick their battles. They
Ah.
feel into, like some situation might be annoying, but they might just let it go because they know that in a different situation that's when they'll make their move.
Oh,
And they
wow.
they they know that. So because of their carefree and like optimistic, what's the word I'm looking for?
Character?
Yeah, like a presence that they have, people just accept them for
Hmm.
the way they are. That, they're kind of like, oh yeah, because it's monkey, you know?
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. So, how has working with animals made an impact in your own life?
Oh, it's made so much difference. I see the world so differently now. And I actually look for signs. I
Mm,
look, I see around me, I see what kind of animals there are and what they're trying to tell me, or, if there's a situation I have to look out for. I can also tell by the behavior of my animals that something is changing.
mm.
I know that a lot of people, with the eclipse that we just had, that a lot of pets were having different behaviors.
Right. And I do also believe we were told by scientists to expect behavioral changes, much like, for example, just before there's an earthquake, living in California,
Yes,
we get earthquake. It might just be seconds before birds start to fly in awkward formations, or a dog can get slightly nervous. And it's something that we hear about that sounds strange, and yet it happens.
it does. And it happens a lot. And
Hmm.
I think that, if you see a rabbit on a roof, then, you have to go for higher ground. Don't even think about it. Don't even stop to take a picture. Go and go up. Because once a rabbit goes up, floods are coming.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah. Well, because you're in earthquake country.
And
I'm in
you're in
flooding
flooding
country.
country.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. And especially living in a more type of urbane society, there's this disconnect to nature, or perhaps
Yes.
some of our natural selves. Whereas 100 years ago, when we were more rural, where a lot of us lived in the suburbs or in farms, we interacted with animals more. So there is this connection that perhaps was lost and now is being rediscovered, or it's never gone away, and maybe people don't talk about it as much anymore. But what we can certainly say is that animals are part of our life, are part of our experience. They enrich us in different ways, and we can learn so much from them.
Oh, yeah. We really can. And, just opening up to that possibility also makes life more fun.
Nice.
Yeah, it makes it more enjoyable just seeing little signs. And you'll see that the more you see the signs, the more you're going to see them, because
Mhm,
you're tapping into this. It could
mhm,
be like a song that you hear on the radio, or like maybe a little gift somebody gives you, like maybe an owl or a wolf, or you keep seeing people wearing something on their t-shirt, like that. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can see different animals. You might see a picture on Facebook. You're just scrolling around, and all of a sudden you see a lion, and then you see a lion on a t-shirt, and then you see a lion because somebody has a picture on their phone of a lion. There's so many ways that we could actually get animal information without actually seeing the actual animal.
I love it. Many of us do think about animals, do think about nature, but in a very transient way, where we do think about it. We do know, like, for example, we've all heard of Caesar the dog whisperer, right? We know it's there, and we think it's cool, but then we forget that just like him and just like you, we can have a connection to an animal. It could be to a cat, it could be to a dog, or the horse or the lion, and they can enrich our lives and also help us with their characteristics, with their qualities, that we can implement into our lives. And that's something quite beautiful because it reminds us of the interconnectedness of things. Things don't always have to be about what did you produce this exact moment. It could be about what was your relationship like this moment? How was your conversation? How was connecting to that part of nature within you, whether it be your relationship with yourself or the wisdom that you are gleaning from an animal? How did that contribute to the conversation that you've had today with XYZ people or the conversation I'm having with you? I think it's not always a conversation that we have, and yet I do think it's in the back of the minds of many of us, and we just don't talk about it as much, and there's so much that we can learn from paying attention, one, to ourselves and who we truly are, and then we can start to look at our surroundings with a certain self-awareness, and that surroundings includes people and animals.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mention that because I think a lot of people don't realize that their pets are actually mirrors of the owners.
Mhm.
And that's a whole different conversation, but I wanted to throw that in there because a lot of people think that they're, better their pets because they're the boss, the master, or whatever, the pet owner. And a lot of times our pets really show us what we need to learn. They mirror us in a lot of things. I'm not saying that it's always the case, but in many cases it definitely is.
And there's
And
also that joke, pardon for interjecting, but there's also that joke that they say that sometimes people and their pets look alike.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Right.
that's so true. And it's really funny because people always think that they rescue pets. What if the pet actually rescued them?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
food for thought.
Oh, absolutely. Many years ago, during a breakup, I was very sad, and I used to call my dog, who's crossed over the rainbow, my grumpy old man. And he was a grump, he really was. But he was so loving, and it was so funny because during that breakup, he was my comfort. He would come up to me and give me doggy kisses and snuggle up next to me and was very protective of me, didn't want people coming near me. He was basically in protector mode, like, I'm going to protect, my person. And it was his love that took me out of the hump because I was rather saddened, but I had to get up every morning. I had to feed him. I had to walk him, take care of his needs. And having that responsibility coupled with love takes you out of your own ego self of poor me to there's somebody out there that needs me. And in that moment, it was my former pet.
No.
So he was definitely a beautiful lifeline during a very sad period of my life, but he was also a lifeline during some of the most joyous periods of my life. He was there for both highs and lows. It's a beautiful symbiotic relationship that we can have with animals, and there's so much to learn. I certainly feel that I'm always learning a lot from my dogs, and one of them is patience and more kindness and more love and acceptance because they tend to accept us unconditionally. There's also this beautiful idea of wisdom from animal personalities, traits, and so forth.
Obviously, I'm not expecting everybody to be an animal communicator. And I think everybody can be. I think that some people are a little bit further away from their abilities than other people might be. So there are very simple ways to actually tap into this wisdom without it being out there, or you don't have to believe in all kinds of Harry Potter kind of scenarios to be able to tap into animal wisdom.
How would you do that? How do we start to think about integrating this idea of bringing the energy of an animal to our everyday life?
That's a really good question. I think it depends on how far you are with your interests in animals. You have to have a certain belief that an animal can actually help you. So you could do a one-on-one. Want to know more of how it works, and you have some situations that you really could use some help with. Or I also do workshops, and there are a lot of workshops around that also help you. And you can even do workshops with animal communication. I also give those. There's so many things that you can do, just even going out and observing. Maybe you have a certain bird that always comes to visit you. Look at the behavior and feel what situation you could use that behavior, or what is the animal trying to tell you.
We all seem to understand animals differently, but if I'm understanding you correctly, Corrine, if we take a moment to observe them, then we can learn from them and perhaps we can learn what they're trying to communicate, or we could pay attention to their behavior, and their behavior can give us insights in terms of how we can act towards others. Corinne, is there any last thing you'd like to share with our audience in terms of animals?
Well, if you're down and you don't have a pet to help you and love you, a good energy to tap into is definitely dolphins. Dolphins are very playful, very loving, and very compassionate as well.
Hmm.
And if you're looking for playful and getting your mind off of, whatever it is, and you just want to have fun, otter. Otter is,
Otter.
yes, otter is definitely the way to go.
Nice. I love that. I love that. And Corinne, if we wanted to learn more about animals, their wisdom, how to incorporate some of what we can learn from them into our lives, where would we find you?
I have a website, theanimalsknow.com.
Mhm.
It's in English. I also have it in Dutch, but definitely translated in English. And you can always email me at info@animalsknow.com. And if you have any questions, or you'd like to do a workshop, or if you have a bunch of friends and are really, really interested, let me know. Drop me a mail. I'd love to hear from you. Or even if you just have something to say about this podcast, I'd be really interested.
Yes,
Um,
so be sure to leave some comments, ask questions on, and we'll try to answer them.
yes, definitely.
So, Corinne, it's been such an honor and joy to have you today. Thank you for your time and for your presence and for being you.
Oh, thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed it. And I have to say that you're such a nice, nice, nice person. And if I would have to recommend like a power animal for you, it definitely be swan. Very
Oh,
gracious, very pretty inside and out.
oh, well, thank you so much, Corinne. I am honored. Thank you so much.